gamers, this is Asvardul, and welcome to an exciting new episode of the Game Development Livestream. Tonight, we're going to be sort of working on Sara the Shieldmage. You'll hear about that more in a second. This is probably going to be actually a shorter broadcast. Um, First things first, though, I always like to start off by showing what I've been working on actually for the past month. I didn't do a broadcast 2 weeks ago because, well, honestly, I didn't have too much to show. I showed a very basic 30-second demo to the Unity community, and, well, it didn't well, it did go badly in one sense, but in another sense, it was good. I got some really good feedback on what people were expecting to see with Sara the Shieldmage. Um, I, yeah, I got a whole lot of really good information, but more importantly, I got some of the feedback that sort of helped me get over a more insidious rut in my game's design. First, though, I'm going to show you what I've worked on. That's, well, I open a scene, an actual scene, before I show you what I've been working on. Find it, yeah, Ruins of Feldholm. All right, so one of the things I've been working on is this intro scene. You just saw the screenquake. Yeah, you see guard Mark here turn to face Sara. I finally got those conversation events to properly work. There's a fade out effect. You can do stuff. That was the extent of my 30-second demo to the Unity community. Actually, that rumble effect that you saw when the demo started was part of the feedback. Pretty much what I'm trying to do with that is just show the first 30 seconds of the game and ask people, hey, is this interesting? Would you play it? I think if George Lucas had done that, Star Wars wouldn't suck. But, well, not that Star Wars sucks, just his presentation of it. Pretty much, though, the important thing was the immediate feedback was, no, it's not quite there. Added a couple of things which seemed to help, but ultimately, what I came to on that was, it's going to sound weird too, but I might have tried to do the beginning too early. Now you're saying to yourselves, as Vardal, you've worked on this project for a few months now. How the heck is that too early? Well, I've done a lot of work on the basic systems and trying to find the essence of the game. And I actually met with some success in that. There's a bit here in the Ambassador that I'm going to show you, though, because this is where things have gotten even more interesting. There's this handy little manager here called the Nemesis Manager. One of the things you typically see in an Eastern RPG is there is a group of heroes who want something, and then their nemesis, which could be the evil lord, it could be the evil lord's band of baddies. They're constantly doing things to screw with the hero. Now, you could take that a number of ways. The traditional Eastern RPG approach is to go and just pre-script all of it. It has a lot of advantages in doing that. You can design the gameplay in a reliable, testable way, which is good. But it's also fallen out of favor in the last few years, and there's reasons for that. Some of it's because other genres have become able to tell story as well as a JRPG does. So now you have games that tell stories, but not in the way of a visual novel. Eastern RPGs do directly descend from visual novels. Now, what does that have for Sara the Shieldmage, though? What that has led to is this Nemesis Manager. Pretty much, when you are done with the static introduction that's going to set up Nausea, the nemesis to Sara, all of a sudden, this thing is going to go active, and you are going to start having to deal with a nemesis who is enacting an evil plan. There's some elements of genetic programming involved in this in a weird sense. Um, I can get into what that means a little bit later, but ultimately, the thing is, no two playthroughs of Sara the Shieldmage are going to be the same. What that also means, though, is that because there is no static story, that what Sara the Shieldmage has evolved into, in one sense, is a strategy game expressed by Eastern RPG tropes. And that's probably one of the most powerful realizations I made, is that I'm using Eastern RPG mechanics and presentational tropes to solve strategy game problems. And for me, this is a big thing because I've hated strategy games for a long time. I'll be completely honest with you. I think StarCraft 2 is probably the bane of modern gaming in some ways. Just, I really don't like some of the things it does. Warcraft 3 and most of these Twitch RTSs have the same problems, and those are usually what I tend to think of when I think of strategy games. Obviously, there's other examples. You've got Civilization, you've got Final Fantasy Tactics. There's all sorts of great strategy games, and that's what also sort of intrigued me about this whole direction of expressing a strategy game through the scope of an Eastern RPG, because I've really wondered. I enjoy the premise of strategy gaming. It's just I find myself completely hating the implementation most of the time. And I might have found a way around that. Now, I'm being cautiously optimistic with that. Obviously, I'm going to be completing this game. When I'm going to be completing it, well, we'll get to that in a second. However, yeah, I think that I have found a good path for Sara the Shieldmage. And to me, that's the most important thing, because there's a lot of people on this channel who really like Sara the Shieldmage. They want to see this game happen, and it looks like it's gonna happen. It really does. And I was worried for a few months there because it seemed like the game was losing momentum, and I was frankly getting ready to abandon it. But, well, there's been some happy accidents. But I might also get that other wish too in a weird way. I want to bring your attention to what the Chrome tab I had opened. There is right now a game design challenge in the Unity forums. I'm going to be taking part in this. The general idea is to create a game in 5 months, 3D grade A worthy. In my work on Sara the Shieldmage, I think one of the things is that I had a hard time developing with great speed. And that's something that I've wanted to do something about. Now, what I've lacked is an external influence of any kind. And to that end, I'm going ahead and joining this, because what's going to happen is this Shadow K individual, I don't know his real name, there's a number of people who are going to be working on this game design challenge. Eggy1234, I'm not a stenciler, I'm a Unity user, but you might still enjoy this. What's happening? Um, yeah, I'm going to be joining this. I've actually got a concept that I've been throwing around in my head for a little bit for a procedurally generated Metroidvania. Damn it, Mom, stop calling. Thank you. Trying to broadcast. And yeah, I think I can bring that idea into this contest of sorts and create a playable grade A worthy game in 5 months. I'm going to have some mentorship. I'm going to be able to focus on, building some good technologies and learning to do art in a reasonable amount of time. And Yeah, either way, I win. What's going to happen with this? Let me see if I can find it for you. There could be a small reward in it for the best game. There could. It's a possibility. Now, for some other people, that would be probably the cop out of the century. For me, though, it doesn't really matter. It's reason in and of itself. I like to think of this sort of thing as, well, you know, when the villain in a cartoon is like heads I win, tails I win, you know? That's sort of what I'm thinking with this. I'm Even if I fail to make something in 5 months, I learn better development practices that I can bring back to Sarah the Shieldmage. If I succeed in making something great in 5 months and selling it, making money, being able to do game development more often, I win. So yeah, I mean, and what's more, there's still Sarah the Shield Mage, and win or lose, I'm bringing that information back to that because Sarah the Shield Mage is in a great state. So hey, there you go, right? These are the sorts of things you have to think of when you're working with a game. I mean, I've had a hard time with Sarah the Shield Mage. I've learned some very useful ideas and been able to apply some of my business programming experience to this title. And that's been incredibly helpful. That's why the game is in part in such a good state. It's just it's taken a while for me to develop. So, yeah, if I can work on that speed, if I can get that pipeline more effectively built, then, my friends, we're on to something, and I will be able to provide you with great games. And that's what I'm here for. Right, so, like I said, this is going to be a short broadcast. I wanted to talk about that, and more importantly, I wanted to make a open question of sorts. I typically broadcast every 2 weeks, and either on my YouTube channel or even here on Twitch. I would like to make myself available to ask what you would like to see. Sarah the Shield Mage is not dead. If I have been at all circumspect about that, don't worry about it. Sarah the Shield Mage is still happening. In fact, Sarah the Shield Mage has a chance of actually getting finished now, so that's something I really wanted to bring up. I'm just as I'm entering this 5 month challenge, I've got another good project to fall back to, and with some pretty decent technology. So yeah, a lot of hope, a lot of good things, a lot of good feels. I do hope that's appreciated, and I hope you all eventually wind up enjoying the fruits of that labor, because Sarah the Shield Mage has been a labor of love sometimes, and yeah, spent a lot of time building a Eastern RPG, and I think putting that out there, that's been a dream of mine for years. I'm sure most of you watching this stream or even watching this video in the future, I'm sure you all um can agree with that. Yeah, it's a powerful moment. It's an interesting moment because much can go wrong, but my plans always work. So, well, in some sense. Now, I think that I'm done gushing. I think you all would like to probably ask some questions or throw out some ideas. So, go ahead. This is my community. This is your moment. Go ahead and ask anything you like. I'm watching my Twitch chat right now on my smartphone. Um, I'm gonna be watching the comments section of this video on YouTube when it goes live for certain. I'm very curious as to what you all would enjoy. Sort of what I'm going for. I haven't actually began formally working on this. This challenge does not start until tomorrow, actually. And there's a pretty comprehensive itinerary right here, and I think that it'll be a good challenge to work under these constraints right here. What I'm going for is a space-based Metroidvania, something very similar to Metroid Prime, actually. I've played a little bit of Halo lately, every once in a while. I really enjoy the idea of using first person shooter mechanics to solve Metroidvania mobility problems. In fact, one of the other projects I'd done that sort of died as a nearly complete prototype was a first person shooter called Onslaught of the Laser Cat. It had the Metroid mechanic of shooting a door to open it. There were some cool things I did with physics, like with something called a gravity lift. In fact, the gravity lifts interacted with bullets because they were extremely simple, but it was something that was so easy but so powerful. I left it in, and players loved it. But I couldn't figure out the Laser Cat's AI. But that's a different story for a different time. Not sure about multiplayer because I have to do this in 5 months. Multiplayer adds complexity like crazy. So the 1.0 release of this unnamed Metroidvania um, isn't isn't likely to have it, but it's something I want because there's always that Terraria and Minecraft thing where you've got people both exploring these procedurally generated worlds, and there is something great to say about saying to your real life buddy, "Hey, I'm playing this awesome procedurally generated game. Want to come explore a random planet with me, man?" So yeah, I'd like to provide players with that. Not seeing a lot of Twitch activity, which it's not really unexpected. My Twitch channel is usually pretty quiet. So yeah, I'm thinking if nothing happens in the next 3-ish minutes, I'll probably go ahead and cut the transmission, cut the broadcast. I've been watching too much Babylon 5 lately too, apparently. Cut the transmission. But yeah, oh yeah, that reminds me of something else I wanted to show you guys. Something a little bit more technological now that I've gotten through the heavy, intense stuff. Framework, RPG framework. I've made a series of decisions. For starters, I took the simple JSON library, as can be found on the Unity wiki, and I've broken it out by class. I've also made some additional modifications of my own. Did I just... Yeah, I opened Visual Studio. Just making sure I didn't do something stupid. Anyone who's watched my channel for this long knows that even I am able to do really dumb things. Some would say especially I am able to do really dumb things. If you've played against me in Halo, you would agree. Because I am not that good at Halo. But I am good at programming. Right, so there's this handy little thing called IEnumerable extensions that I've been working on. This little is null or empty for an enumerable collection has been here for a while. There's this copy list, though. There's not a whole lot to say about that. But that's not the interesting bit. What you'll find is I've started to make these sort of serializable classes, but I've been making them with these sort of JSON class methods and implementations. Pretty much what I did is early on in this, I'd started off by having managers that read JSON data go through a manual process to unpack it. Now, once upon a time, where this line is, there was a metric crap ton of code. It's well and good. I decided that's superfluous. I'd had some things I was trying to work on with the event system. What's happened with the event system is it's become more central to the game. It's not just being triggered through dialogue anymore, as I've gotten away from the whole Eastern RPG thing as the primary premise for the game. As the strategy game thing has happened, I found myself needing to allow an agent, that Nemesis manager, the ability to fire off events. It led to a refactor, which led to me re-examining my old code. And what has happened is I looked through the horrible code, my eyes glazed over, and I decided it wasn't working, so I made everything that gets read or written through the JSON mechanism either read a state from a existing JSON class object, or export its state to a new JSON class object. This has a number of really good effects for the code. Even though some of these individual classes now have more responsibility than they did, the code that has to do with parsing these things is a lot more readable. It's a lot more debuggable. In short, by breaking things up, even though I was originally worried that that would make my code base harder to read, well, it actually made it easier to read. So, yeah, having less stuff in one area was a tremendous boon for Sara the Shieldmage. I was able to verify manually the uh, that the various managers, like the item database and all the others, that those still work. And I actually have a couple of refactors I still need to do, but pretty much I've gotten Sara the Shieldmage to a stopping point per what I was talking about earlier. So yeah, this is something that you can do. Now I did have to make some slight modifications to this JSON class file right here. I've since actually committed this up to my GitHub repository, and that's a public repository, so if you all want the code, well, it's there for you. But yeah, I mean, other than just making a couple of quick mods to the JSON class thing and figuring out what I wanted, yeah, that's a thing. Another thing I've done too is replace the old dialogue event structure with this thing called a game event. It's the same thing. It's just a event and event args pair. It's a weird form of a key value pair, pretty much. Um, but I like having it as its own standalone thing because it has its own name, and for me at least, it's a little bit easier to wrap my head around. Given that I'm going to be coming back to this project in 5 months, it really helps me to be able to know what's going on. And that's something that when you're writing your games, it's a generally good idea to pay attention to. If you come back to this in 5 months when you're done with whatever, and you don't know what's going on, yeah, that project's just about dead. So I don't want that to happen. So I've taken steps against that. Another interesting thing. Actually, let me go ahead and show you guys the Nemesis system. I'm proud of it. I really like to show it off. Pretty much the general idea for the Nemesis is that after your initial encounter with her, and she proves herself in the story to be a complete, well, bitch, what's going to happen, pardon my French there, what's going to happen is it will start causing the Nemesis to enact their evil plan. Now, there's a number of Nemesis parties that are supported by this system, and all of them will be running simultaneously. Pretty much a Nemesis party is named, is in a place, has members, but most importantly, has a plan. This is where things get really interesting. So what I'm doing with this is something called genetic programming. To give you, if you're completely uninitiated, genetic programming works actually like actual genetics. What you do is you set aside a number of pretty much prefabricated instructions. You randomly combine these and then test it against some fitness function. If the sequence of instructions that you've created passes that fitness function, then that sequence takes on a mutation and gets ran back through that fitness function. Now, how does that have anything to do with games? Well, if you want an evolving artificial intelligence that reacts to the player, it has possibilities. But it also needs some tinkering to work properly, and that's something that I'm leaving it off on. So what happens is there is a sequence of these Nemesis objectives. These are steps in a plan. They're named, they have an ID, they last for an amount of time that depends. They're described, they have misinformation, which is actually unique to how I am choosing to implement this. But then there are these outcomes that, based on whether or not it's a success or a failure, determines what happens next. So pretty much you have a step, you have a bunch of you have a bunch of steps that your villain is doing. They could be ruining your reputation in some city state. They could be plundering an actual in-game dungeon for an artifact. Um, and then when something happens with their plan, go back up to this. Where'd it go? I've got too many tabs. That's the problem with the Nemesis system right now. It has a lot of tabs. I'll just go back down to the progression for you. The progression is the plan. I probably should rename that Nemesis plan, but yeah, I don't know. I'm stopping work on this game tomorrow, so yeah, I probably won't rename it. But pretty much what happens is this is acceptable plan thing gets called whenever there is a reason for the plan to be rethought for any reason. And then when that happens, the plan gets its mutation, and then the NPCs or the Nemesis starts acting on it once again. So pretty much what's going to happen is, well, a number of things. First thing, the one thing to know about genetic programming, you're never ever ensured to get an optimal strategy. This is random. Um, but in my opinion, this is an example of good, responsible use of randomness in game design. What we are doing is we're not arbitrarily determining whether or not a step of the plan succeeds. Most of the time, that is something that the player can actually interfere with. There will be mechanisms to allow players to recruit spies in other towns or to do other things. Um, what I'm not going for is a strategy game in the traditional sense so much as it is this party led by Shieldmage Sara, who is trying to disrupt a group that is trying to disrupt the world. And these two groups are in conflict and periodic and frequently butt heads, not just in sort of the RPG battle sense, but also in other things, in conversations, in deploying spies. In some ways, what I'm creating is truer to a strategy game than what StarCraft could dream of because, well, I'm actually doing. StarCraft is a tactics game. Tactics involves using military forces. That's it. Strategy involves both diplomacy and tactics. That's the difference. That's why I think this game will scratch your itch